Hi guys! So I wanted to come on and just start a tutorial for the Hello Old Sport socks. This will be a free pattern that is coming on my website very soon. It is a sport weight sock pattern, just a vanilla sock pattern. These go so quick because it's a little bit thicker than the fingering weight yarn, but it's still thin like a fingering weight, but you use less stitches and it just goes so much faster. Just even that little bit of thickness really does help make it go faster. So for this pattern, I use a contrast color for my heels, toes, and cuffs. That will be the gray color. And then I will use this rose gold color as for my legs and my foot. And that is the main color of the yarn. So first I want to start with casting on. I don't need the main color to cast on, so I'm going to put that one aside for now. I use double pointed needles. Sometimes I use magic loop, sometimes 9-inch circulars. It's really whatever you're in the mood for. I like to mix it up because it works with my hands. Sometimes my hands crave different things, and lately it's just been the double pointed needles. So I use ChowGoo US2 double pointed needles. I use 4 double pointed needles when I am making socks. For cast on though, I'm not quite sure what brand this is, but it's just something that I've had in my stash forever. And as you can see, it's just a little bit longer. So when I am casting on, I like that little bit of extra length, and I will cast on with this and then quickly move over to my ChowGoos, even just right away on that very first row. So for right now, I'm going to put these guys aside because I don't need them right now, and I will use my longer double pointed needle. To get started, I'm going to do a long tail cast on method. So I'm going to pull out enough yarn to cast on my stitches. I'm doing the medium size, which is 52 stitches. The small is 48 and the large is 56. So I pull out the yarn from about the tip of my fingers on an arm to about my chin. And I often have a little left over, but I'd rather have too much than not quite enough, because after casting on all those stitches, you find out you come up short. It's a little deflating. So first step is to make a slip knot. To do that, so this here is my working yarn, and on this side is my tail. So I'm gonna just make a little loop like this, put my fingers in, twist it. I'm doing this so you can see it a little bit better, but twist it and then pull up the working yarn right through. And then I'm just going to pull and make a knot. So what I've done there by pulling up on my working yarn is the one that tightens and loosens my knot here, my slip knot. So I want my working yarn towards me in the front. I will put my double pointed needle or your magic loop or whatever needle you're using on there and just tighten that slip knot up. So I use like a boomerang method. So I'll put both strands of yarn in between my ring finger and my pinky, and then put my index finger and my thumb in between that loop. Let me show you again. So just laying the yarn in between my ring finger and my pinky, and then opening that up with my index finger and my thumb. So to cast on my 52 stitches, I will take my needle, and on this very bottom strand right here, I'm going to go under this bottom strand and through that loop right there. You can see that loop. Through the loop, go around the top strand and then back through the loop and down. Let's do that again. Use my needle, come forward, up, and under, and then back up and over and through the loop. So it's under, over, through. Under, over, through. Pull. under, over, through, pull. Now what you'll notice here is that I am leaving a gap here in between my stitches. That's to help give me a stretchier cast on. And you'll notice that eventually here, I'm going to just kind of speed things up here. Eventually I will kind of run out of room on my needle to cast on my stitches because I do leave that space there. And as that happens, I just pull it down and continue. Once again, I've run out of room, pull it down and continue. Now, of course you want to try to get your stitches even across here, but every once in a while I'll have one that's maybe a little bit closer together or farther apart, and I really have found that it just works itself out. It's really not a big deal. So I'm casting on my 56 stitches. I'm going to finish that up and I'll be right back. 51, 52. So there we go. I'm stopping with 52 stitches. So as you can see, they're bunched up right now, but as I was going, I did try to keep that space in between them. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide my stitches up evenly across 3 needles. Well, here's my first needle. So I'm going to try to be as even as possible, but what I like to do is make sure to have multiple of 4 on each needle. It helps to keep me in track when I'm doing a knit to purl to ribbing, because then I know I always start with a knit when I start a new needle, and I'm not having to really think about, wait, am I starting a purl? Did I just knit? Did I just purl? And where I'm at. So what I do for this one here is I will put 16 stitches on one needle, have 20 in the middle, and then 16 on another needle. And this is how I do it. This is what I have found to be most effective. So I'm going to take my needles that I'm going to be working on and just slide 16 stitches just right over. So (15) and 16. So there we go. So I have 16 on that one. So I'm going to just use this here as my middle needle. So that's going to have 20 stitches on it. So what I do is so that I don't twist my stitches, I just lay them flat so that my bottom seam is intact here, and I just simply turn it around. Push my stitches to the end of my needle here, grab another double pointed needle and move 16 stitches on to this needle. Now look at this, here is the beginning of my round. So I just want to keep that in mind. So you always want to slip purlwise to keep your stitches from twisting. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15, 16. So again, I continually keep my stitches in a line, making sure that my cast on edge is facing the correct way so that I am not twisting my stitches and have a twisted sock. So how this is going to work, I'm going to move my working yarn up above because this will form a circle and I don't want this to get caught underneath. So this is my, this will be my right hand needle. My center needle will be the gold one, which is the one that I cast on. And then I'm just going to swing this guy around so that I can now join in the round. I have found this technique to be very simple, even on the go, just keeping my stitches straight and not getting them twisted. So now I'm just going to take another needle and start knitting my 2x2 round, or my 2x2 cuff. So something else that I will do as well to help prevent a gap there is I will actually, that very first stitch, I will use both the tail and my working yarn and just double up and just make that first stitch there. So there are 2 strands here. When I come back around, I just need to remember that to work that as one stitch. So I knit that guy there, tug a little bit on the yarn, and then I will just drop the tail. So there we go. So now I just have my working yarn here, and then I'm just going to continue to knit in a 2x2 ribbing. So there's knit 1, or knit 2, that was my second one, purl 2, knit 2, purl 2. So if you've knit for any length of time, you know that this first round can be a little fiddly, but then once you get going, it really does go a lot quicker. So if you are very new to knitting, just know that that's the case for everybody. It's not just you. It truly is just a little fiddly, but it works itself out. There we go. Now I ended on 2 purl because I made sure when I was dividing up my stitches that there were a multiple of 4 on every needle. So I will always end with 2 purl stitches. So this is my cast on needle here. This is that gold one that I was using. So when I take it out, I will just simply set it aside and not use it again until I hit the toe when I need another needle. But until then, I'll just set it aside and won't even think about it again. So knit 2, purl 2. Knit 2, purl 2. Just keep working all the way across. Again, this, I know it's a little fiddly on that first round, but stick with it. Okay, so here I'm done with my gold needle. I'm just gonna set it aside and pick up my 4th ChowGoo US2 needle and continue on. So here's my beginning of round because this is where my tail is, and like I mentioned, it looks like I have 2 stitches here because I worked the tail and the working yarn together on that first stitch. And you just don't treat it any differently. You just treat it as a regular knit stitch. So here, let me talk too about needle placement on double pointed needles. So this one doesn't matter as much because this guy will just kind of fall over to the side. But I've always found it less fiddly if my working needle sits on top of the next needle, just like this. If it sits this way, I feel like I'm always fighting this needle a little bit. So I just always keep my working needle on the top, and it really is quite a bit less fiddly for me. That is the word today, fiddly, huh? All right, so I'm just working that stitch as one and continuing in pattern all the way around. One thing that I really encourage knitters to do is to think outside the box. If there's something about a pattern that you just don't like design-wise or fit-wise, by all means change it. That's what we as makers get to do. We get to change things to how we like it. And I understand sometimes there's just a lot of serenity in following a pattern just as it is, but oftentimes it doesn't even take much effort. Maybe the size small and the size medium or just, one's too small and one is too big. And, that's okay. Maybe do instead of the 48 or 52 stitch count, maybe do a 50 stitch count instead. Now, if you did that, you just have to keep in mind you wouldn't be able to do your 2x2 ribbing because it's not a multiple of 4, but you could do a 1x1 ribbing instead. And that's totally okay. Maybe you want to do a twisted rib instead. That's okay too. Maybe instead of 18 rows for your cuff, you only want to do 5 rows for your cuff, or maybe you like a longer cuff, and that's okay too. Same thing with your leg. You can easily make a pair of shorty socks by just doing a few rows of your leg, or just only doing a cuff and then maybe a couple leg rows and then starting your heel. Knitting is so versatile to make things really how you like it. So don't underestimate yourself, just think it through and know you may make a mistake along the way. And, I can't emphasize enough how important it is to know how to fix your knitting. And there's a ton of good tutorials out there, but never think you have to rip the whole thing out. You can always most likely fix your mistakes. So anyways, I'm gonna continue on around. I'm gonna work 18 rows of this cuff, and then I'll see you guys right back here. All right, so I've finished my cuff and I've done 18 rows of 2x2 ribbing. Let me show you a little trick how I count my rows. I used to get a little bit confused as to where to start counting, and just upon learning and further inspection, this is how I do it. So I pick a row that has a nice clean edging, nice clean bottom on it, like this one here. It's a knit row. And this V right here, this here is from my cast on edge. So I'll start counting just right above that. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 right here, and 18 is right there on my needle. If you need to, you can always put your spare needle in a stitch, but I just count these legs or the V's, either one. So I've done 18 stitches. So now in order to change colors to my main color for my leg, I'm just going to put that guy right here in my bowl. All I'm going to do is cut my contrast color, cut the gray. I'm just going to leave a tail to weave in, cut it, and now I can just put this guy here aside. I don't need it again until the heel. Let me show you also just what this sock looks like. This is sock number 1, so I'm working on the second sock here. So I did the gray right here, and then I switched to the rose gold for the leg. Again, did the gray for the toe, the rose gold for the foot, or sorry, for the heel up here, and then the gray for the toe again. And we'll get to those a little bit later, but for now I just wanted you to see like a finished product, to see what it looks like, to see what the goal is for this. All right, so I've dropped my yarn, and you can keep it attached for a couple rows if you want to, but really there's just not a need. So I'm going to take my new color, my main color, and this is the same to change colors for really any project that you're working on. It doesn't matter if it's a pair of socks with contrast toes, cuffs, and heels, if it's a scrappy project, or just adding another skein of yarn. This is a technique that I use anytime I switch colors or switch skeins of yarn. So I'm coming in with my new color. So I like to, for just a couple stitches, it's similar like to catching a float for the old color. So I just hold on to both of them, hold on to my new yarn, leaving a tail, and then start knitting my new color. Now sometimes my tail will get kind of sucked in and I'll just pull it out again on that first stitch. It's really not a big deal. Let's see. Okay, now how I catch my float, now this will kind of weave in my ends as I go is one of the techniques that this is one of those techniques that people use here. I will still go and weave in that end when I'm all done, but it definitely helps secure it and gets rid of all the holes. So let me show you again. Sorry, I went a little too fast. So I put my needle in that first stitch as if to knit, and then it's like I'm catching a float. If you've ever worked color work, it's the same thing. So I'm just going to go underneath my old color and knit my new color. Knit my new color. So I'm working in stockinette. My ribbing is done and I'm just working in stockinette. Now I'm going to go under, I put my needle in as if to knit, just go under that contrast color, that first color, and pick up the new one. Knit the new, and then catch the old, knit the new. Knit the new, catch the old, knit the new. So you can also pull a little bit if you'd like, but you don't see it. It is just invisible there, and you can see on the back here, like where I've caught it, and I can tidy that up either now or later just by pulling it a little bit. But that helps to create less holes when you are changing colors, is what I've found. And so now I'm just going to ignore that old color and just work in stockinette until I am ready for my heel. Okay, so I'm back here at the beginning of my round. Those two indicators are my tail here, and then also I'm back at the start of the pink. So when you get back to the front or to the beginning of your round, you just knit. You are now in your new color and you just knit. Now you can see this stitch here is very big, very loose. Don't worry about it. It's really not a big deal. Watch what I'll do here in just a minute. I'll knit a few down here and then I'll pull that end of the tail and it will tidy it right back up. I'm not pulling really hard. It's just a little bit to tidy it up. And then you'll see this is where I stopped catching my contrast color. And I'm just going to keep knitting till the end. So now, as I mentioned, the sport weight socks do go very, very fast. I don't know if it's just because we have a few less stitches on the needles, and also because it creates a bigger row as well, but they do go really fast. So I will continue to knit my leg. And you knit your leg as long as you want it. Typically, I do about 50 to 55 stitches or 50 to 55 rows on my leg for a full-size sock. And then I'll get to that point and I will meet you guys right back here and I'll show you how I do my heels.